Alright, Reflection. I was not expecting to have to do another one today, but Bungie just decided to drop their Season 21 weapon changes preview. Chris Proctor is going to be talking mostly about, a balance blog. They shipped a mid-season update a couple whiles back that was more PvP focused, and some stuff they're going to be testing in Season 21 and onward. This will be mostly for PvE. Um, Changes to the hipfire reticles, various changes to weapons and bits and pieces. So, they look back at player feedback about how reticles convey less information at a high-end field of view settings, information that obvious mid-combat and exotic weapon perks whose states can be hard to track, have been rebuilt several weapon reticles to adjust these. So for hipfire reticles and FOV, so we know some weapons are better hipfires. I think weapons like the Battler are good at hipfire, Last Word, and some other ones. Let's see, Battler. Oh, it's Hot Swap. Custom frame to dramatically increase accuracy, stability, and targeting while hip firing. So this will probably look at that as well. As we know, Last Word is a better gun for fire rate at hip fire. So hip fire reticles and FOV, the two reticle elements on most weapons illustrate the current cones of auto aim, aka bullet bending, and accuracy, aka error angle, using moving circles and crosshairs. These are clamped in size on screen to avoid growing too large or too small, and hence blocking the very center of the screen or overlapping too much of your weapon in the action in front of you. At default field of view, these elements move as your auto aim and accuracy change, but at high FOV they typically can't shrink enough to show the current angles, resulting in them being fairly static. We built these reticles for the following weapon types so that they move more visible at higher frames while still conveying the current state of weapon accuracy. Fusion rifles, hand cannons, sidearms, and trace rifles. We plan to update other weapon reticles in a future release. Shotguns are now scale with FOV such that the reticle will closely match the pellet spread regardless of your selected FOV. And note that as of Lightfall, they dynamically scale with shotgun spread and angle changes. Charge meters. Fusion rifle charge, and sword guard energy are critical aspects of these weapons, which until now required relying on cues built into the visuals or audio. We built their hipfire reticles to include this information as well. Fusion rifles will now have a charge meter under the reticle, and swords will now show the current guard energy. That is actually pretty cool. Experimental aim down sight reticle. Our hipfire reticles are built with technology that lets them scale with the weapon auto aim and accuracy, but our aim down sight reticles are typically hard to build for specific weapons and don't necessarily show this information. We've been experimenting with this approach that keeps the hand-built aesthetics of the weapon sight and scope, but replace the center crosshair of the red dot with a variant of the hipfire reticle. We decided we'd get this into your hands to see how it feels in a live game before looking into this type of reticle further. Shira's Wrath now has an ADS reticle that reacts to the weapon accuracy in auto aim state, and ties into red reticle, meaning this will change color with an enemy that's within the engage. Okay. Custom exotic weapon reticles. Plenty of exotic weapons have perks with states or counts that are important information for the players. We've added these reticle elements to show these several exotics. Note that exotic swords and fusion rifles also benefit from the above change and the sword meter. Okay. Note that some exotic weapons already convey this state and weren't included in this pass. The specific additions for weapons are charge meter exotic weapons, Devil's Ruin, Salvation's Grip, and Grand Overture. Doesn't typically have a charge meter. Perk counters show pips for perked shots. Quicksilver Storm, Ace of Spades, Lumina, and Traveler's Chosen. Perk progress shows perk buildup for the Manticore. Perk active shows when the exotic perk is active. Hawkmoon, Age Scepter, Teraba, Touch of Malice, Cryosthesia, Training Ghoul. Charge meter and perk counter, Vexmouth class. We'll keep an eye out for opportunities for custom reticle work for other exotic weapons. Some general stuff. And an expectant screen improvement. With the release of Season of the Deep, We're also doing an overhaul of how we showcase weapons and other items in the description. You can now rotate the weapons the same you would for your sparrow or a piece of armor. Add a support for ambient visual effects to play for weapons that have them. This applies to your inventory and also when inspecting ornaments in the Everywhere store. These tech improvements have been compounding benefits, enabling us to allow you to rotate shifts and preview their contours. We also removed the depth of field blur from our weapon, ship, and armor preview screens to allow you to see the angles of your gear better. Full auto melee. Knowing how popular the full auto, now called full auto firing, setting was, we've implemented matching full auto melee. Lets you continue melee attacking with your fist, charge melee, sword, glaive, or Roman super melee by holding down the appropriate input. More details there. So for PvE, bows. Tyranids 7 steps have always been weirdly low. We're touching these weapons anyway, so opted to update its stats while we were there. Submachine guns. Aggressive submachine guns have surged in PvP. They need to be brought back into the band. We're doing this in a way to keep them viable by reducing both the base and crit damage a little, requiring higher precision to match the optimal TTK. Reduce the base damage from 14 to 15 and increase the precision hit multiplier to 1.5. So crit damage will now be 21. Goes from 2.18 to 8. Wait, if you increase the The Immortal is such a stat monster that no other aggressive frames can compete. So we brought its range while allowing it to continue to excel in other areas. Reduced the base range value by 10, so they took away 10 range. Snipers are a very safe option. We don't want them, but we also don't want to make them dominant. But there's room to bring their damage up to improve their feel in PvE. Note that rapid fire frames will also get a large reserves bump and a reduced recoil in the mid-season update. We'll keep an eye on this and may bring them up in the future if this doesn't move the needle. Increase the PvE damage by 10. Note, Honed Edge perk shots don't receive this buff. All other exotic snipers will receive the buff as written. So it's weird because let's talk about what exotic snipers we have. We have Borealis, Whisper of the Worm, Darcy. So let's go sniper rifle. Oh, and Cloud Strike too. Yeah. So realistically, there's not a lot of exotic snipers. And that's kind of the thing now. I don't know why we're also getting they're also getting the buff because they're really not going to be used. Cloud Strike maybe, but that's the only good one. Darcy is, even with the quote-unquote buff, you still don't see it that much. And Whisper of the Worm really isn't all that. It's just 4 times the charm on a power weapon. It's a sniper. Borealis, I mean, it's okay. Yeah, sure, use it, but I don't see it being used all that much. Unless you bring back, like, snipers having barrier, or you give them an intrinsic perk. Exotic weapons. So here's the thing. Eyes of Tomorrow's multi-target missile volley and adaptive ordnance exotic traits suggest that it should be used to kill groups of enemies, but the rocket launcher economy really doesn't allow for that. But what if smart use of the weapon against groups refunded ammo? Killing 4 targets with a missile volley will refund 1. You literally just made You literally just made this exotic come back to being the most used weapon in Gambit. Well, you kill 4 enemies, you get a missile volley back. Yeah, you can kill 4 guardians with that with no problem. I've seen whole teams get wiped with this weapon before, and now you're saying you're going to let them get back 1 brick, one volley. Graviton Lance performance feels exotic, but it was easy to miss out on the full damage burst because of such backloaded. We felt tuning the Revision Zero's heavy run burst would be a good fit. Increase the RPM to 300. Reduce the burst delay by 20. Now matches Revision Zero's rate of fire. Rebalance the damage per shot. So now on bodies you'll do 19. And crits you'll do 30. What? This is on the first shot. Decrease the second shot to 25 and the crit to 42. Okay. Interesting. Jade Rabbit is a strong PvP exotic, but it was difficult to keep track of the state of the exotic perk, and refunding a single ammo just wasn't impressive enough for an exotic. These changes will make the state clearer and provide more reward for precision. Add a buff tech that shows that Fate of All Fools increase the body shot is active. Quickly hitting 3 crits now refunds 3 shots instead of 1. Flying around Manticore is some silly fun, but we wanted to be more rewarding, mobile, and sustainable. With this change, you should be able to remain in air longer and safer for doing so. Increase the catalyst damage resistance to tier 4. Increase the movement speed during hang time. Activating the catalyst burst through an airborne kill or sustained damage following an airborne kill now partially refills the magazine. Lumina's cap on noble rounds was 5. While working on the exotic reticles, we opted to match the momentum shot, so now noble rounds is 6. Hardshot wasn't quite hitting the fantasy we wanted, so we made it easier to exploit the exotic perks. Damage now increases, activates quicker while invisible after 0.25 seconds instead of 1 second. Hardshell now weakens enemies upon dealing any damage while the damage increases active. We love Worldline Zero's performance, and with all the attention we've been given to swords, we wanted to spend time really differentiating it from the certain perk on the glowing sword. Okay. The sprinting heavy attack can now be chained into itself once. Sword guard energy has been increased from each sprinting heavy attack, reduced from 100 to 50, decrease the damage from individual sprinting heavy attacks by 25 to compensate. Sweet Business performance is fun, but we felt that plus its fun factor and we felt we could really plus its fun factor and strength by adding some explosions. Now fires explosive rounds every 20 shots, fewer shots while fully spun up. Oh no. Oh no. 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 Oh god. If you watched the last video before this one, you talked about, I literally mentioned how, like, annoying, like, how fun acting Warwick is, but Allied rifles were in a bad spot. This just makes them match into there now. Legendary accuracy hits extremely hard already, dealing some of the highest damage per shot in the game, but its ammo reserves run out fairly quickly, and you have to be right on top of enemies to use it, so we relax both constraints. Increase the ammo to 16, and increase the distance to 12. Tommy's matchbook is all about burning yourself, so we updated it to let you burn others as well. Catalyst updated. While overheated, sustained fire scorches your target. Every 5 shots applies 14 plus 7, so 21, with Amber of Ashes activated for scorch stacks. No time it explains drone wouldn't work against barrier champions when it had the anti-barrier effect, so we fixed that, and also made the drone work with a Freedom Frenzy perk. Update the drone to work with anti-barrier, will break barrier champion shield and over-penetrate combatant shields. Update the drone to work with Feeding Frenzy from the No Time Catalyst. This also resolved an issue where feedback for Feeding Frenzy would always play when the player spawned and never again. Skyburner's Oath Pass has been a bit too conservative, so we brought it up to be more competitive with other scorching options. Increase the scorch stacks to 5 and 5 to 10 with Amber of Ashes fragment. Salvation's grip, performance, and utility is entertaining and situationally useful, but as a heavy weapon, it really needs some damage without compromising its identity. So we built in a function using bowling as inspiration. Reworked to have 2 firing modes. Charge Shot creates a pattern of stasis crystals where the number of crystals is no longer dependent on the charge time. An uncharged shot is a normal grenade launcher shot, which does more damage to stasis crystals than frozen targets. Add a perk that reloads the magazine from reserves when you quickly shatter at least 3 crystals with an uncharged shot. Bad juju has always been hard to control, and it turns out this is because it was originally set up to use auto rifle recoil. Fix an issue causing the weapon to recoil like an auto, making it harder to control. The recoil pattern is now similar to other pulse rifles. So Bungie, what you're telling me is you just made this thing more act like a recoil for pulse rifles. Chat, you know how I am with pulse rifles. And you know how good I am with bad juju. So now this has pulse rifle recoil. Oh, yes. Fighting lane's damage against red bars spiked to massive levels due to a recent bug. We've addressed this, but note that it still receives the 40% damage for exact primaries. Yeah, it should be a special. Thunderlord has surged in popularity with the release of the Catalyst in the Season 20 machine gun buff, but shipped with a bug that allows...
Do you know that Bill can't take you today? You know that, right?
Well, I have to go in for 2 o'clock.
Who's taking you?
I'm going to have to probably call someone.
Okay. Because I think he's gone.
Okay.
I don't know if he's gone yet.
Thunderlord surged with a bug that causes loud lightning strikes to strike at a higher frequency than intended against divinity bubbles. We've shut the damn door. We adjust this note that regular crits are not affected by this change. Fixed an issue resulting in hits against the divinity bubble cause 2 crits instead of 1. Winter's Bite initial version included an exploitable damage bug and is fixed here. The impact damage has been removed and redistributed to a detonation damage. The self-damage scaling has been tuned to account for the increased damage to detonation. For perks, Project Focus is fairly potent, but the perk deactivator was very unforgiving. Bonus lasts until a shield pop. Returns with shield regenerate to 100%. Thresh, Demolition, and Pluggus have always generated increased energy on shotgun, fusion rifle, and sniper kills, but Glaive really missed out on this until now. Grants increased energy to gray projectile kills, same as shotguns, fusions, and snipers. Reconstruction has been simplified under the hood so that we can place the perk on more weapons without exceeding perk budgets. This results in a change to the timing of the perk, where the initial timer and the cooldown timer between reloads has been unified. The base perk will be 4 seconds, and the enhanced perk will be 3.5 seconds. So you'll get more ammo back, okay? Shoot to Loose is already situationally useful, but we've really been looking at a good way to allow players to interact with Orbs of Power. Update to pick up Orbs of Power. Currently, this only works on direct hits. The ability for orbs to be picked up with weapon detonations will be added in a future patch. So, shoot to loot on a gun that has explosive payload will probably be good in the future. The future. We are in the process of redesigning how zoom interacts with damage fall-off. Weapons with that weapon type standard zoom, submachine guns, this would be the 14 zoom stack, will be unaffected by this change. But weapons with lower than standard zoom for their archetype will have their damage fall-off buff. And weapons that are higher than standard zooms will have their damage fall-off reduced. Note, this will only apply to a damage buff. To avoid negatively impacting weapon feel, and bonus aim assist and accuracy and recoil will still apply. We'll also be making a pass at the base damage fall for several types of weapons to make sure that weapon types that were previously relied on having above standard zoom are to be competitive and not left behind. There's also a big sword update coming with the goal of making guarding substantially more viable. In the more distant future, we're working on an update to Sparrows that will allow players to use their favorite instead of always on time without touching the always on time itself. Okay, well, that's been this one. That was short and sweet. The only thing I like about this is oh, I forgot this one. Scout Rifles. Long was inadvertently receiving the damage bonus versus minus for exotics. We adjust this. It still receives the Scout Rifle PvE buff From the okay. The only one I really like, only two I really like, is I know my Titans. You're gonna like the acting war rig will be back on the menu with Sweet Business, and for me, Bad Juju. This might be good due for PVE, but this might be my PvP one. So yeah, that's that. I'll get this up as well. So, Red Faction, have a good one. See ya.